Hey there. Just doing some Palo Santo and some sage. I don't know if you can see the smoke on the camera, but I'm just blowing it here for a moment. So take these moments to settle in with me. Take a deep breath. Pick one, pick two, and pick three if you want to be deciding if one or more of these has a message for you. And the reading we're doing, the reflection offering that I have for you today is about what part of you is ready to be loved. So the reason why I say that is because wherever we're in pain or in suffering in our lives, it's a part of us that we haven't loved yet. It's a part of us that we've misunderstood, or something that we've misunderstood. It's a story we're telling ourselves about whatever the circumstance is or how things will be that is causing us pain. And as we clear up the misunderstandings within us in our lives, we feel more at peace, more whole, our awareness is expanded, our wisdom is embodied. And generally the experience of life is much more pleasant. From my own experience, I can tell you that I love being alive now. And when I started, before I started and understood that I could heal, I was very much wanting to escape life. I did not like the experience of living in a human body at all in the beginning. And now, because I did the work, what you sometimes what you hear me refer to as the work, is shadow work, is like loving the unloved parts of me. As I've done this over many years, I have now come to a point where I absolutely am so grateful for every single day that I have. I feel at peace. I'm not in pain. I take my challenges in life as opportunities. I know there's a solution to any problem I face. I surrender and drop resistance, and I love myself unconditionally. And this allows me to love others unconditionally. And it doesn't mean I always like or agree with what others are doing, but I do accept that they are doing it. I do not lie to myself about what they're doing. And I understand that in their bigger picture view, there must be a reason for them to have that experience and to perpetuate that reality for themselves. Okay, so, and other than that, it's not my job to worry about that for them. If they come to me asking for help, I'm certainly glad to give whatever wisdoms I have to share. So, and that is, I believe, part of my role here, is being an example of someone who has done this work so that others know it can be done. And sometimes people don't love that when they don't know that they're just as capable of doing it for themselves. And it's all okay, right? Like, I don't need someone to approve of me or like what I'm doing or see it my way. Those were all experiences that I have had in the past, and come to find out there were misunderstandings. I absolutely don't need others' approval. I know my heart, and I know that my intentions are not to hurt myself or anyone else. And I think that's enough to be a kind human being who's doing my best is absolutely enough. And that is who I know myself to be. So, as I become aware of any part of myself that I haven't loved yet, I actively do the steps to make sure that part of myself knows my love, knows that it is not misunderstood, that I'm willing to take the time to understand it, integrate it, love it, be present with it, and allow for all the aspects of me that have been caught up in unprocessed traumas, fears, limitations, or thoughts to become free again and to integrate with me in the wholeness of who I am and all the things we've traversed up to this point. I find myself to be very capable of living life and living it well. And if there are any parts of me that don't know that yet, I invite them to join the whole part of me that knows it. You know what I mean? So if you can look at it in terms of that, at least in an experimental way, then you can see that what we're doing here with this reading is identifying something that you haven't quite understood yet that needs your love within your own life, or your acceptance, or your surrender, or needs to be clarified, or needs acknowledgement. Now, some of these things might be things that you've already worked on before, because some of you may know that sometimes we get a layer of something, but then there's a deeper layer. Sometimes it's like a Jenga tower when we unpack our misunderstandings and we have to go back to something after we've worked on something else. So if you find yourself activated by the idea that I'm bringing up something that you've already worked through, I've found that that's something worth looking at again, because when we have any emotional charge towards a topic, that's an indication that it has a misunderstanding around it within us. So if I brought up a topic and you had fully worked on it, and I was insinuating that you hadn't fully healed it, you wouldn't be upset. You would just know. And there would be no part of you that felt invalidated or, for the work you had done. I saw something interesting on a social media feed this morning. I really, first of all, enjoyed it because there was a clip of, excuse me, a gentleman who was going up to a group of older women with a camera and a microphone. And the first thing he said to them was, "You are beautiful." And the woman said, "Well, who are you to decide if I'm beautiful or not?" And I was like, yes, this woman is wise. This woman is trying to help this young man, he was considerably younger than her, understand a concept that he has clearly missed, which is that it is quite arrogant to comment on someone else's appearance, whether we approve or disapprove. And that young man was using that compliment of her appearance in order to try to create a power struggle or power play, meaning he expected her to appreciate it. And when she didn't appreciate it, he got upset and said, "Why can't you just say thank you?" And it was like she didn't value his opinion on her appearance. There was no reason for her to be thankful for it. In fact, it felt like an arrogant way to interject upon someone, right? Energetically, that's what it is. But he was expecting her to be appreciative of his opinion of her. And when she didn't, he went into this victim mode because he was in a power play. So a power play means someone wants power over another person, meaning he went in expecting her to bend to his will, which was in the expectation that he would be appreciated for his compliment. When he was not appreciated for his compliment. He went to the camera saying, old ladies, old grandmas never like me. He made himself a victim, because in a power place, someone has to be a victim. So since he wasn't getting to be the powerful one, he saw himself as the victim. And, first of all, I was really glad to see women who understood this concept, which I've come to understand and be aware of myself. I cleared up in a misunderstanding about the need for women to attain approval or flattery from men, or to be seductress to men. I realized how imbalanced and unfair and completely against what I believe in that is. So I stopped doing that, and I also recognized that when people are either approving or disapproving of someone's looks, that it's actually an egoic coping structure that makes them think that they have a right to judge somebody else's looks. That's a judgment. That is an opinion, and it's a judgment. And they can think it all they want. They can keep it to themselves. But once they tell somebody what they think of them, whether they like how they look or they don't like how they look, it's like, why? That there's no reason for it other than the arrogance of thinking that you are important enough to that person's life to have an opinion about what they think. And why would that be the opinion that you share? There's so much more to somebody than the vessel they are in. And my life experience showed me that, at times in my life it was even scary to be found attractive by men. And at times it was very uncomfortable. And at times it felt like that was the only thing that mattered. And at times it felt like I needed to be more attractive so that I would be liked. And all of those things are quite ridiculous in retrospect, So I was glad to clear up misunderstandings on all of those type things. And what it revealed to me was that this is an inappropriate thing that we've been doing. But the other side of that is that that young man operating in that way, the way I saw it was he was actually showing us how he had been treated. So perhaps, as the adults in his environment as he was growing up programmed him to behave in that way, to compliment to get approval, to gain good favor, and then to be a victim if you don't get your way. And it's like, if that's his operating system and that's how he's operating, it's good that he's come in contact with somebody who can show him that that's not actually a healthy operating system. He may stay in denial. He may have to get rejected many, many more times before he figures out the pattern. But that is what it is. It's a misunderstanding within him about the appropriate ways to operate. And why I say that's inappropriate is because it creates an imbalance in the energetic exchange. And that will always backfire. That will always create a war. And in this case, it created a war within himself, where he had to go into victim mode because his power play didn't land. It was not. There was no defense applied to his strategy, and so he's the one who became defensive because he was only in a strategy of power struggle. So if you're fair relating, you might find somebody pleasing to look at, but you also know your place, and you know that that's a personal opinion of your own, and it may not have any place within them. If someone is asking you, how do I look in this? Sure, it's much more appropriate to share it then. But also, can you be aware that somebody's need for your approval or opinion on what they're wearing or how they look in what they're wearing stems from an insecurity in them. It's a place in them who's not been able to reassure themselves, who's not been able to assess themselves. And that also would stem from a trained way of being. Someone in their environment showed them that this was the way to operate, and that's why they're operating that way. So it's an unconscious program, right? And it's been culturally accepted widely, as a way to operate and so-called relate. But I wouldn't say that's a way to relate. Those are power struggles that are created when we give somebody our power, when we give somebody the power to deem us attractive or unattractive, when we give somebody the power to say whether or not we look good in our clothes or if that's the appropriate clothing for us. The real gauge is, do I feel good? Do I feel like I'm doing my best? Do I feel like I'm loving all the parts of me? Do I feel like I've loved myself if this is how I dress, and if this is how I feed myself, and if this is how I treat myself? If this is how I do my hair, do I feel loved? So it's been a beautiful process of learning to love myself that got me to this point where I'm completely free of, one, trying to please others, with my appearance, and two, beating myself up or thinking that I have something to live up to with others' expectation of my appearance. And just really getting to know myself, my body, my preferences, my needs within my own self. Like, it's all about me, but that allows me to be polite, considerate, and fair with others. That allows me to be a kind person to others because I've been kind to myself. So the parts of me that haven't been loved yet, there's a lot less of them. And when we don't have a love for a part of ourselves, oftentimes we can project it onto someone else and see it in someone else. And those are the people who we judge. And whenever you judge somebody, it's an indication of something you haven't loved in yourself yet. Because when you love it in yourself, it won't bother you in them either. Maybe you can find something that you judge in someone else, love it within yourself, and still not agree with it. Maybe you can still see it in someone else and not agree with it, but you don't have an emotional charge. You have more of an understanding that this is their experience and that it serves them in some way. Because we're not God, right? We don't get to dictate what is appropriate for somebody else to experience or not. Our job is to clean up our own selves and to make sure that we are loving ourselves so that we are a reflection of that into the world. We are an example of that to others, and that all of the parts of ourselves are not at war. Because that's the only way a war can play out, is that if we are at war with a part of ourselves. That's what plays out on the outside. So as we clean up our own misunderstandings within ourselves and we're not at war with any parts of ourselves, there is peace on earth. And this is a possibility for everyone at this time. And it does have to be a conscious choice to clean up any of the misunderstandings that we have when we are unconscious of them. So we become conscious of them oftentimes because the human brain is set up in such a way that it notices patterns. So when we see that we've been stuck in a pattern for a long time, we can get fed up, or we can actually just notice it. And either way is a doorway, an opportunity for changing it. So this reading is to serve as like one of those noticings, a doorway to clean up a misunderstanding that is ready to be cleaned up within us. So one or more of these may be relevant to you. And let's start with pick number 1. All right, pick 1. Let's start by looking at who you are in this situation we're looking at. We'll put this guy up here. He chose the jade. That's what that stone is. Jade. It's green stone, so it's a stone of an open heart, which you have and you aspire to. You're a loving person. You're someone who knows what you're passionate about. You very much fertile, loving, caring, competent person. And the Page of Pentacles is in reverse. Perhaps There is like, you do it this way because this is the way that works. You know what works, so you stick with that. What part needs your love? You may have a part of you that felt disappointed or heartbroken in the past that's been carried silently. Also, there may be a need to recognize yourself for your daily structure, the way that you've disciplined yourself and the habits that you keep. I think they're all very healthy, and it's like a matter of like, if you're doing those to avoid your heartbreak, that's a different energy signature than doing those to care and love yourself. Care for and love yourself. You see what I mean? It's like you're doing, like on the surface, everything looks great because you're doing everything that you need to do. But the motivation that keeps you doing it might be a bit of avoidance of the fear, or trying to be good enough, or something like that, or distraction from feeling the actual heartbreak. Now, if you've had your heart broken in the past, or are actively in a heartbreak, you may have already been dealing with it, or feel like, what more could you possibly do? Like, you did what you could. And this is just recognition that there may be more, right? Like for instance, when I had been healing layers of heartbreak, there were different stages that I had to do different things for myself through it. And like one of the last stages was like forgiveness, of myself for being in that situation, and for the other, for being who they were. So that heartbreak needs your presence. And maybe there are certain things like you didn't want to face about it, and that's why you haven't been fully present with it, like your part in it perhaps, or something like that. So even when this is wearing on you heavily, I don't think you give it much attention. That's why it needs your presence, because it's like you would put on a happy face, not recognizing that you had every reason to have that heartbreak. So it ends up being deceptive because you're not really happy. You're just letting people think that you are. And you're doing it in a very structured, disciplined way so that it doesn't slip. It's like, I'm going to live within this controlled environment, do this every day, be around these people, go to these places, have these goals, and that will be my focus. And it's at the expense of a certain part of you that still needs more presence. It could have been heartbreak that actually happened in a family home, like mom's house. The heartbreak could have been that, for instance, if mom had certain expectations for you to live up to a certain image, and it didn't take into consideration how you felt, that could have been heartbreaking. So it could be the root cause of some of this for some people. Leaving love behind, making a hard choice. It happened at a time where you didn't really have any choice but to suck it up, so to speak. I think that you became very efficient, very busy. You took an active role in your life in order to keep up with what was expected of you. You may find yourself to be a very organized person. So these are all qualities that are very valuable to you, and This is a reading that's not saying those are wrong. It's just simply recognizing that the reason that you're doing those things could be a reason that needs your attention. And it doesn't mean that you wouldn't continue to do those things after you loved yourself through a certain uncomfortable feeling. It just means that when you do those things, it'll be much more pure and much easier to do without that underlying reason for doing them as avoidance. You can believe and trust in yourself. Here's the second card talking about mystery, hiding, discover, detective, read a book, secrets. The other card we got was down here, and it was about, and we got deception in the middle there. Okay. There's some sort of lie here. It could be about someone who left your life. Like I just got this image of like a daughter being told by their mother that the father died, but he didn't really, and he had left the family, or being told that he left the family but he really had died, or like just something like along those lines. There could be like a family secret type thing that is heartbreaking and that you don't want to unpack, so to speak. It may have had to do with saying goodbye, about putting certain things behind you. I'm also brought to a story that I heard recently about, there was a young man saying about how his grandmother had 3 husbands, and he didn't know because he was a child and he was born, and that was just his grandpa. But when grandma and grandpa got a divorce, he found out that no one else in the family liked that grandpa. But he had he had thought of that as his grandpa. He had loved that man as his grandpa and didn't know it was grandma's 3rd husband. So very interesting. So something like that maybe. Yeah, because now we got marriage. Interesting. So this could have bled into the way that you navigate your own marriage. It could have like maybe past things were not talked about, something heartbreaking that was kept a secret. Maybe you found out about it, or when you did find out about it, you weren't able to process it, so you pushed it down below or something like that. Free yourself of guilt and shame. So I think that you definitely know that this isn't your fault, right? Like you already know that you're innocent in this situation, okay? So I think that's why you carry yourself the way you do. But then there's this little part of you that is a bit scared to take on a new adventure or to break out of your prescribed way of being. And that's because your prescribed way of being is actually a coping mechanism for that heartbreak or for that unprocessed deception. So the ways that you feel about that situation, whatever it may be, are waiting to be processed and waiting to have your presence on a deeper level at this time. If we looked at this from a soul level, holding the opposite extremes of life, yeah. It's like the energy's ready to be neutralized now. You've experienced something that, has served you in the way that you got to see how far you could go in an effort to cope with and be in the opposite energy of something that you actually carried. It's like the ultimate division of your own inner self, because you act in a way that is completely no one would ever know this happened, right? It's completely opposite of, or far from the spectrum of, and the extreme of the thought that that would have happened in your life. So this may have caused issue for you in your marriage or your relationship, simply because even though you're doing all the right things, there may be some sort of uneasy feeling within yourself, and it could even be sensed by others. It could cause this sort of feeling of like, something off about this. Like, yeah, you're doing all the nice things, but like, where's the emotion? Like, why does it seem like this is surface level? You know what I mean? And it's because it's done as a coping mechanism. And it doesn't mean that you won't do it as who you really are when you integrate this wounding pattern, right? All right, so you have your own inner guidance that's important to follow. Have faith that you can handle this, that you came to do this, that you have what it takes, and that it just, is a matter of doing that inner work, of being present with this part of yourself. You may have felt really alone in this, because I think it's something where other members of the family, if they were involved, they did not process this. This wasn't something that you were able to talk about together or move through together, or you were left to your own devices on the topic. So this is a reminder that actually, like your whole soul plan included the experience of this particular thing. So you've never actually been alone, but you have had that experience of feeling like you're alone through this. Others may not have even understood you if you tried to talk about it. Maybe you didn't understand why it wasn't being talked about, and maybe it was kind of very surprising, right? People were too busy to talk about it. It wasn't like something that others were like ready to discuss or move through with you, or be an example of moving through for you. So this has just been being processed below the surface, and you have been figuring out who you are through it and despite it. And now, like, it's like you're kind of at this point where it's like time to welcome that part of you, that hurt part of you, home into the wholeness of who you are, into this strong being that you have been, not only despite what you went through, but because of what you went through. And this hurt part of you is ready to join you in that very competent, put together place that you now find yourself. It's like your coping mechanism actually became the welcoming mat for your hurt part, for your heartbreak. And now this heartbreak can be sat with. So this might mean thinking the thoughts, acknowledging the story, understanding what your thoughts about it are, processing it from the vantage point of your complete presence, meaning you are the one who is with the part of you who feels the hurt, the confusion, the anger, the frustration of what that experience was for you. Okay, so pick one. The part of you that needs more of your love is an old, heartbroken part of you that was heartbroken based on a secret that may have been a family secret, where other people knew but nobody was willing to talk about it, and instead it was either brushed under the carpet, or there were just like false stories told about it, or something where there needed to be a coping mechanism for dealing with the pain because it was too confusing or too overwhelming to process on your own at the time that it happened. And now you are ready. Okay, beautiful. So I honor you in your process. Remember, this is just information to reflect on, so just take what's helpful to you. And I will perhaps see you in a future reflection offering. Bye now. I picked two. Let's look at what part of you needs your love or is ready to be loved by you. Who are you in this situation? Star in reverse. Page of Cups in reverse. Two of Cups in reverse. And the Two of Wands in reverse. Someone who doesn't think that they have a opportunity to heal something. Like something happened to you. And you think that it's something like you'll always have to be burdened with. You'll always feel the effects of. You'll always be hurt by. Okay. So there's a mindset that has been fed through our culture that is based on lack and victimization. And it's a mindset that doesn't allow for the things we talked about in the introduction. So if you haven't listened to the introduction, please do go back and listen. Because I think it's important to note that all things can be healed unless we deem them impossible to heal for ourselves, unless we think that we're going to carry it forever, unless we think we're always going to be hurt by it. And this is one of those things that you may have been told that you're always going to have it. A doctor could have told you that, you know? It could have been just something that you decided. It could have been something that culture told you. It could have been something you saw an example of, you know? But whatever it is, it can be healed. The star can be turned around. The star is the healer. This Page of Cups can open his heart again. It can be turned around. Love and balance in this situation is possible. And you can make the decision to do that for yourself. It all has yet to be opened to you as a possibility, okay? Let's talk about it. Because, you know, I'm not trying to shame you or blame you. I'm saying, like, you have an option. Let's offer you some information to reflect on, so you can decide what to do with the information, okay? Let's see. Two jokers. Very interesting. Okay, so far what I'm seeing, this is financial restraint coming right next to $1 million idea. Obsession, compulsion coming next to fairies and magic unicorns. Okay. What I'm kind of being brought to right now is a way to balance out this energy. So whichever you think, right? Like maybe you don't believe in fairies and unicorns, but you do find yourself obsessively thinking about something or compulsed towards something. Maybe you don't believe that you can come up with $1 million idea or that you can be financially wealthy, but you're also like, and maybe you're struggling with financial restraint at the time and telling yourself the story about that and living that. So I want to kind of show, if I can, an experiment in thought for you. Can you consider that all of these things, both sides of these topics, are all just imagination? Also, both things are true. Even if you don't believe in fairies, magic, and unicorns, they exist. Even if you want to just say that fairies exist in people's minds, they do exist, right? And if you can think that that exists, you know that your an obsession exists, right? Because you've experienced something like that. And you know that your financial restraint is a story you tell, like, but actually you have enough. You have what you need. And it's very possible that you could tell a different story that you were a millionaire, right? Like that could be the story you tell instead of the story of struggle and not enough. So there's a lot about the foundation of your beliefs here being questioned. So a lot of invitation to think about why you think what you think, where it comes from, and how true is it. There's a worksheet by Byron Katie called the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. And you might be interested in looking at some of her work because it's a way to balance out the energy in the mind with the realizations that everything that's true, the opposite is also true. That will help you kind of come to terms with the idea that you've just been living the reality you've been telling. Let's see what else. There's more here. With a closed heart, you might tend to think you need and want from something outside of yourself, or not believe in magic because of your closed heart, right? You may not see that there are options for $1 million ideas to come about. Like you would be, open-minded enough and in tune with your intuition and have the space enough in your belief system that you would let new versions of reality come into your awareness for your choosing, and know that you have a choice. You literally have a choice. And I know when it comes to things like obsession and compulsion, it feels like you don't have a choice. But what if you did this? What if you just surrendered to an obsession? And you just said, all right, I have given my power away to this obsession. That's what it is right now. You stopped resisting it and you just said, this is what it is. It's like when you let go of the resistance to something, you immediately get relief from it. So things will start to shift right there. Let's see what else. Now this might be something that you want some assistance to dig in on. And I'm not sure the scope of this reading is prepared to help you get out of that. This might be more for the purposes of a recognition of this is your energy. But this would be something I could help in a session, like a one-on-one session if you're interested. Or, go to somebody who can help you. Diamond in the rough. Pay attention to dreams. Yeah, you've been in a fixed reality. There are feelings. Okay, so say you were someone that were denying your feelings, and then you all of a sudden got obsessed. It's like your feelings kind of took over and said, look, we're here. We have something to say. We want to be expressed, and it's just for your own good, something kind of took over and let you start feeling. But also the obsession could be in the mind, a compulsion could be in the mind. But here we have emerging feelings and open-hearted. So perhaps you already feel the foundation of this belief system you've been living in crumbling. There are chinks in your armor, so to speak. Go forward fearlessly is some of the advice from Archangel Michael, which you may not believe in. Miserliness and possessiveness. Okay. So that belief structure that's centered around lack and there's not enough, that causes people to be at war and to relate using power plays and power struggles. Because if there's not enough, then you have to fight for what you need. But it's not true. It's actually not true. So when there's not enough, then you're miserly and you don't share and you're not generous and you need to hold on to things so that you have them when you need them. But this is all lies, and these beliefs are the basis for the reality that you're living right now, which is why it feels very stuck. I understand that those belief systems are built on proofs that you've observed through your life. So there's part of you that's just going, well, that's bullshit. Or how can it not be true? I'm living this truth. I get it. Surrender to those. Like, understand that that is a thought that you're having, and that's a reality you've lived, and that it's also okay if you surrender that thought and surrender that reality in favor of one that you'd rather live. So if you're going to live out your beliefs, what would you rather believe? Is it worth an experiment? Is it worth an experiment to look at your thoughts, your beliefs, and what you've been focused on, and take conscious control of them in order to see if you can change your reality that way? Isn't it worth an experiment? Now, emerging feelings are going to be the feelings that have been suppressed or denied. They're going to come up through this, and that is sort of separate from the beliefs. It's like those need your presence, or they will take over the show. You know what I mean? Like, your feelings have to be honored in this process if you have them lodged within you. If it's just a passing feeling and it's not something that you've been suppressing or denying, sure, let it flow through. Let it go. Don't own it. But if it's something that keeps repeating and trying to get your attention and comes up in a pattern over and over again, when something happens, that certain feeling tries to come up, then you know it's something that needs your presence. Okay? Juggling resources, waiting on results. So maybe you've tried this process of changing your beliefs before, and it just felt like you never got any results. Well, I want to offer this, that one time I did a reading for someone, and they were like, they didn't really want to focus on what the reading was focused on. It was a general reading, and what the cards and their energy was telling them to focus on was not what they wanted to focus on. Their mind was like, no, where's my stuff? They were trying to manifest their life into something different, probably by focusing and changing their beliefs and things like that, right? And they just wanted to know where their stuff was. And what I tried to point out was that in the noticing of they not had their stuff, that was the vibration they were in. So their stuff wasn't there because they were still in the vibration of noticing they didn't have it. So while you're juggling resources, waiting on results, it's like, actually, being in gratitude for what you do have can be a lot more effective. Being in the feeling of already having it is the most effective thing that you can do. Now, that's hard, right? If you've gone without it, if you've lacked it, if it's been taken from you, if you have feelings that are unprocessed around it, that's where your work is. That's where the work is. Get yourself to be free of all that and to be present in general with all things, with what's happening in the moment. And then you can be in that sense of gratitude and one with life, and then you become this magnet, willing to welcome the things into your life that you were so-called waiting on, but they come when you're not waiting on them anymore, when you're just content and appreciative and with gratitude for all that you do have and all that you have achieved, and the experiences you've had don't serve as something that had made you a victim, but something that had taught you and brought you to where you are and served you wisdom that is useful to you going forward. I mean, so much so that, like, when I look back at my experiences that may have been considered traumatic or difficult or torturous or, tragic, I think I'm actually grateful. I'm grateful. I really love who I am and who I've found myself to be, and that is directly as a result of this experiences that I've had, that I know who I am. So I'm grateful for all of those experiences. Okay, a fond memory, patriarch. Attachment, pressure, love spells, ache, and acceptance. So there may have been like places where you were obsessively trying to recreate something from the past, or bring something into your life that you really want. And if you're not in that place of surrender and reception, like receiving mode, the feminine energy of receiving is where you want to be to receive what it is that you want, right? You're lining up with it in the energy. You're acting as if you already have it because it feels like you already have it, because you don't feel lack, because you're not focused on not having it. You know what I mean? Like if you can't look at that topic and feel that, then look at a different topic altogether. Just get in the vibration of being receptive. And so anywhere where you have been trying to control your life or manifest into your life through the means of this forceful way, this demanding, this where's my stuff kind of attitude, that is something that was there for you to learn from, and now to learn that doesn't work, right? You notice that doesn't work. So there's a chance here for you to rebuild on a more solid foundation. The foundation that you've built on is some misunderstandings and some lies, really, because it's not true that there's not enough. It's not true that you can't have what you want. It's not true that things don't go your way and that you'll always be struggling. You know, it's just not true. So those beliefs end up causing you a lot of difficulty and struggle in your life so that you can surrender them. And when you come to surrender, then you can start to consider other points of view, or at least be in that receiving mode because you're surrendered. You're not trying to demand things. You're not trying to take that masculine energy to create something to happen, because you're in the receiving mode of just lining up with it. And we all have both masculine and feminine energy to access and utilize if we want to. So this is just kind of saying, like, the old method of doing things isn't actually going to work for you, because at this time in your life there's a new foundation being laid so that you can operate in a way that is open-hearted, and that you can be a receptacle for your results. And this is through a process of healing that you've been going through. And maybe you've come across a lot of spiritual knowledge, and maybe you have been actually teaching people spiritually. Perhaps there's been some travel that has helped you learn what you needed to learn, or get things into perspective, or there will be something like that will help you. I think that you have been grateful for all that you have. So maybe this is confusing when I say just be in the mode of being grateful. So it's like, you can be grateful, and then you can also notice that you don't have something, right? So it's just like a matter of letting go of surrendering the part of you that wants to focus on the not having of it, and going more into the part of you that is grateful. You see, it's really subtle. These subtle energies can be tricky, because it's like our conscious mind knows the rules and knows how it works, knows that we, are worthy, maybe even. But our operating system is needing to be upgraded at this time. So this has been a process of bringing unconsciousness to light for you from a soul level. It's like being so fully immersed in the illusion, and then understanding and experiencing the process of coming up through that into the awareness, the light of awareness. The only thing that could keep you in the illusion is stuck emotions and false beliefs. Okay, so those are the two things that you're working through in an ongoing way. And if you are not living the reality that you aimed for at this time, it's possible that it's one of those things that's still being processed through in order to allow you to fully line up with it. Rejection is protection. These are advice cards. Welcome, which kind of reminds me of that being in the receptive mode. Having strategy. So It's a matter of like looking at what it is you've been doing and making the adjustments as needed, because it does seem like you do have some of these spiritual concepts in your tool belt, right? Like maybe you've been working so hard to make things happen, with just partial understandings of how it works, and that was all very useful to you because you learned something about yourself and about how it works through that process. And so now this is just an encouragement to actually kind of look at more at that foundation and see what parts of the foundation. It's like if we were downloaded with the belief of money is the root of all evil, then of course there's going to be part of us that doesn't want to be deemed evil when we have a lot of money, so we're not going to allow ourselves to have a lot of money, so we're going to sabotage ourselves anytime that we think we might have too much money. You know what I mean? So that is a belief that you want to eliminate if you're going to have a stable foundation. Maybe there's a hidden belief like you have to work hard to earn money, and maybe you're tired. Maybe your body won't allow you to work hard right now, so maybe you have the reality is that you're not financially abundant because your body is in the mode of needing rest or repair, or you're healing or something like that, because we did have the healing card. So there may be something like that where the belief is keeping you from being abundant because you can't live up to some expectation or standard that was downloaded into you through the culture, which doesn't actually have to be the truth of how you live. So wherever you recognize these things where they've actually been holding you back, it's also okay. It's like, it's okay to be in this process of learning and growing, and we forgive ourselves every step of the way so that there's no part of us left behind thinking, oh, I could have done better. Oh, that took me so long to figure out. Or, oh, I hurt so many people when I was unconscious to that. It's like, no, you have been doing your best. That's so beautiful. This is a tough place to be on earth, right? And it's worry is like a prayer for something you don't want. I saw that on a meme once years ago, and it stuck with me as something kind of valuable because it's true. Worry is a wasted emotion is what the card says, and it's like, worry is, it's like, why would you focus on any worry? There is a solution for all things. Challenges can be looked at in terms of what is the opportunity in this. So why worry? Worry is literally like putting out a message to the universe that, you are in fear. And then fearful things will happen. It might be hard to be honest about some of these things with the people around you. But as long as you can trust yourself, even to go into the unknown, right? You have to be able to trust yourself in order to be honest. And in order to trust yourself, you're going to have to know that you are doing your best, that you have your own back, and that you love yourself unconditionally. And that it's not like about living up to these standards of don't make mistakes or you better know everything, Think about on the childhood playground where kids, if you did something wrong or tripped and fell or whatever, like kids could like laugh at you and point. And that maybe that was like humiliating or hurtful, right? It's like, well, that's not real. That's not what life is, like if you have people around you that are doing that, they're literally like immature children who have not understood the power that we all hold. And you could just be the example to them by standing up for yourself, by being there for yourself, by loving yourself even when they don't. So that is our only job, and I talked about that in the intro as well, like that the war ends when we end the war within ourselves, and that war can only be perpetuated when we don't love ourselves unconditionally. So instead of putting conditions on myself saying like, oh, I need to live up to this standard, or, I'm not very happy with myself and I don't love myself. It's like, no, I actually love myself even when I fail. I love myself even when I have deemed something that I've been doing less than what I'd like to be like. I just use every experience for my own realization about myself, my own ability to decide for myself. Like, there's one person in my life that it's a soulmate for sure. I've never been in a close relationship with this person, but it's been in an acquaintance group that I have participated in at times, and every time I encounter this person, if I look back over the years, I would have to say that he, I'm not blaming him when I say this, because I think this is a beautiful contract that we had, or part of the contract that we had, which was that he brought out the worst in me. And that is to say that every kind of part of myself that I didn't love yet was brought to my attention through my own relating with him. Like the way that I treated him, or the way that I responded to him, showed me things about myself where when I noticed them, I was able to love myself through them and make adjustments. So that is so beautiful, right? Like, I don't feel embarrassed to be around that person. I feel thankful. This person has no idea that they served that role for me, and maybe I would have an opportunity to tell them in this lifetime. I don't know. On a soul level, they certainly know. On a soul level, they know that they offered me a mirror that was so vital to my progression as a human being. And I, have cried a lot of tears in gratitude over the role that person, played for me in this incarnation, because the things I was able to see about myself through the reflection that I got through dealing with him, just in very light ways and passing ways, and social interactions, were so valuable, because they cut to the core of some of my foundational wounding patterns, which is what you're dealing with as well here. Okay, so maybe you can relate to that. Maybe you have a person in your life who seems to bring out the worst in you, or when interacting with them, you always walk away activated or triggered, or thinking, oh, why did I do that? Or, you know what I mean? And it's actually opportunity for you to love yourself through what hasn't been loved yet, which is exactly what this reading is about. Okay, so what else? Just 2 more cards. We disagree, and I'm lying. Interesting. Maybe one of your habits has been to not let people know when you disagree, and to just let them think that you're on the same wavelength, or let them think that everything's okay, right? And it's not authentic. But maybe those parts of you need your love now. Maybe the parts of you that felt like you needed to wear a mask and lie, or that you couldn't express yourself when you disagreed, need your love and your forgiveness and your understanding and your presence and your open heart to tell them it's okay. It's okay. I understand why you did that. If you don't know, maybe ask yourself some questions about why you did that. Understand, acknowledge, understand, and accept that was the truth of it. It's I have done some things in life where at the time I thought it's unforgivable. How could I have even done that? And then from this standpoint I'm in now, having loved myself and forgiven myself, I have nothing but respect for me and my journey, and I understand that all the things that I did, all the experiences I had, I was doing my best at the time. It's okay. And through those so-called failures, I learned who I'd prefer to be. And if we're not allowed to learn that, if we don't even allow for ourselves to learn that, then we're going to be stuck. And we're not going to be able to grow, learn, and embody our highest version, or the highest vision that we have for ourselves. So it just looks like there's, it's like you're operating with some spiritual wisdoms, and then some also, this is hopefully bringing some awareness to some places that are still like there, awaiting your love. And also my presence or my example of being present with myself through difficult things hopefully can inspire you to do the same for yourself in any place that became apparent to you through this reading, or that you were reminded of and already aware of within yourself, but that was brought to your attention through the reading. So remember, it's just information to reflect on. There's absolutely no judgments here for you or your process, because I really have come to understand that each person's process is their process, and I can't know better for somebody else than they do for themselves. And that's definitely something I didn't realize a few years ago necessarily to that degree. Not that I was walking around bossy bee, but with some people, definitely. And much earlier on, like 20 years ago, I was only choosing people that I felt I knew more or better than to be close to. So it certainly has changed for me, where I accept and love those parts of myself that thought that. That was just a coping mechanism for me to navigate life. Now I understand and respect myself so much that I can't help but just respect everyone else. So we're allowed to fumble and bumble through this process of life, and it's ours and it's our own, and I believe that it is our responsibility to love ourselves through everything difficult, and that nothing is unforgivable. Okay, so remember, it's meant to be helpful, so just take what is helpful to you and leave the rest. And thank you for being here. I honor you and your process, and perhaps we'll see you in a future reading. I picked 3. Okay, let's get started with your reading. What part of you is ready for your love? Got 9 of Swords in reverse, 9 of Cups upright, the Wheel, 2 of Swords in reverse, and the 10 of Wands. Who are you in this situation? Let's see. Let me just look at these a moment. Okay, there's something here where, you're on a path, you've put in a lot of work on that path, you're carrying a lot of burdens. There was a decision that was difficult for you, but I think you didn't make a decision. It's like, how that's there's something, I don't know if it was a meme or something I've heard, but it's like not making a decision is a decision. I think maybe you waited and didn't make a decision on something, or maybe you decided and you just didn't let people know or something, but the wheel came and shifted things for you. Something shifted for you where some sort of difficulty left. Maybe there's part of you still holding guilt for that situation where it can be let go of now. Are you holding the burden of a difficult decision you had to make? Ah, yes. Are you holding the burden of a difficult decision that you had to make? And but for the holding on to guilt, you would be really just enjoying life if you weren't dealing with that. Let's see what else. mean, did you walk away from a bunch of people? Throw your hands up at control issues? Let me see. You stood your ground on something. Maybe you have to stand your ground on something with with family and with others who kind of like weren't really for you, you know? Two-faced friends or something like that. Look at this 9 of Wands in reverse. Maybe the people you walked away from don't really even know why you had to. Like, your stand was more silent than outspoken. Like instead of like defending yourself to some people, I think you just withdrew. You went in a different direction, and you did not maybe let them know why. I think that might be what this is. Okay, let's see what else. Maybe it was like a fruitless endeavor, or you felt it was anyway, to like try to explain yourself and try to like convince people of your worth if they didn't see it. Yes, I just got... So I've been... I was watching the show called The Almighty Johnsons. Love the show, by the way. It's on Roku. If you have a chance to watch it, I highly recommend. But, you know, there are some things in there about the mythologies and just like... For me, it caused remembrances and things like that. And like one of the things that I kind of took away from it in myself, for myself, was like, yeah, like there were, like I recognized the way that they use this word and with their accents. I think it's an Australian accent, but it's the word goddess becomes goddess. And so I was just kind of owning that for myself, realizing like, yeah, there have been times in my life where I recognized myself as a goddess and others did not. And it's not my problem that they didn't recognize me as the goddess that I am. And I know that sounds kind of like, it could sound arrogant or whatever, but it doesn't matter because I don't need anyone else to recognize me as a goddess. But maybe there's this like... some sort of leftover debris from that here in waiting to be loved by you. So like, you know, I can kind of, they're showing me, I mean like, my intuition is showing me this energy through remembrances in my own experiences in my own life. So that's what I'm relating it to. So make it fit how it does for you. But like, let's pull some more cards and see what the point is and what the root is. Because so far, all I see is that you walked away from something where it was an unfair situation anyway. You didn't see like a win for like trying to convince anybody of your great idea or of your, you know, worth. Yeah, okay. Maybe there's a part of you that need your love based on the fact that you stayed in it so long. You know, maybe there's part of you that wishes that you left sooner, something like that. Let's see what else. Yeah, I think we might have had high hopes for the situation and maybe like waited for a change in the situation, and which ultimately did not happen in the way that you thought. You know, ultimately you had to make the change by walking away, I think. And like graduated yourself, right? Appointed yourself to your goddess status even if others weren't able to appoint themselves into their own status. You know what I mean? Like, I think that you were trying to live in a higher way or a different way from those around you, and they did not support you and did not recognize you for who you are. And perhaps there was a business venture you wanted to pursue with them, but that was not it was too much stagnancy around you for that. Yes, this could have taken place in your career. This could have been something where there was something to pursue in the way of business, but I think that was something that could not be carried out. There was stagnancy around it. Like the people involved, whether it been family members or gossipy people or friends that weren't really friends or that didn't get it, they were just not on the same path. Yeah, they're just not on the same path. And so while you stood your ground, you weren't able to convince them of anything. Like, you being an example wasn't enough for them to, like, join you or anything like that. You know what I mean? Maybe they turned against you with this gossip card. Like, where maybe they had an opportunity to join you, but they didn't, right? They become hidden enemies where their insecurity took over instead of them rising to the occasion. I think from your perspective, you were able to see the biggest picture view, which was like, as souls, those people are your mates, and they're playing a part, and, you know, it doesn't really matter in the scheme of things whether or not they recognize you. You can recognize them, and they don't ever have to recognize you, because, you know, on a soul level they do, but, you know, on the human level, that's just part of the game. Seeing potential, being unconscious to light. Yeah. Bringing unconsciousness to light. Yeah. And they may not have appreciated your approach to shining a light on some of the shadows, right? It's like if you're in a space and there's a bunch of people coping in an unhealthy way, but it's working for them. Maybe they're in addiction or escapism or denial of certain things, right? And then you come along and you are an example of higher standards, escape from denial, and willingness to solve real issues instead of complaining about them, instead of being victim to them, right? And then the people around you don't have the bravery or the courage to break out of their comfortable methods of coping with life. And instead they turn on the example. They say, all right, example of rising to the occasion, we would rather not look at you. Thanks very much. And they refuse to see the value in rising to the occasion. They refuse to see the option. And so if you are the one who wants to live that way, and the people around you are no longer lining up with that path of growth and truth for you, it just means you've grown apart, right? It doesn't mean they're lesser or wrong. It just means your paths parted ways, and whatever potential there was no longer, right? Now, another way to handle that, and I've seen people do this, I've had people tell me, oh, I woke up a few years ago, but like they're actively drinking and in the partying lifestyle. Because even though they so-called woke up, they didn't want to do what it took to make the changes that reflect what their new level of awareness was. And those people suffer greatly in their health eventually, right? So and that's their path. They're learning something from that. That doesn't make them lesser or wrong, right? It's just their own path. So your paths split with a group of people, okay? That is apparent here now. I think, that offered you a reflection of who you are, right? Like, you know yourself to be the shining light if everything around you is dark. what would love do? Like, this is saying, like, you take that high road, right? Because, like, love doesn't hold blame for the other party or self, right? Like, there's no part of you, like, love wouldn't let you sit there and say it's your fault, like you were supposed to inspire them to rise to the occasion, but you didn't. They turned against you instead. Like to blame it on you and to say that you weren't good enough, or you didn't shine bright enough, or you weren't pure enough, or you weren't the right a reflection for them. It's not really fair to you. That's not the loving thing to do to you. So if there's any part of you that needs your love, that feels like because there was potential for it to go another way, that you did something wrong, that it didn't, because you were the one with the awareness. It's like, you can't control other people. It is a free will choice, and perhaps the lesson that you were learning is to love yourself even when that's the case. Even when you feel like you failed, right? It's an opportunity to love yourself. What is the opportunity in this? To love yourself even when you think you failed. To know that you are lovable even when the highest potential could not be lived out in the surrounding area to you, right? You were in a dark place. That's where God's light sends us, because we're in a big kind of experiment, basically, to see, like, what happens when we separate ourselves from who we really are and forget, you know, and what happens when we put a little reminder in there in our view, and do we turn against it, and do we stay in our fear, and do we let fear win sometimes, right? So the compromise could be something like, you know, allowing that both things to be true, because both things are true, and maybe there's something in your mind that, you know, that has to be adjusted to allow for that reality, that both things are true, that yes, it could have gone another way and that would have been right, and yes, it didn't go that way and this is right. You know what I mean? Both things are true. Just because there was a potential there that souls aimed for, the fact that it wasn't lived out does not mean that it wasn't also a success, because, you know, you can't really get it wrong, right? Like, now we know that that's how it works. Now we know. So make sure there's no judgments for yourself or the others that didn't choose the so-called high road, or the so-called higher standard, or the so-called or take the opportunity to step out of warlike coping mechanisms. And be in gratitude for the experience. First of all, the times that you shared with the people that you loved, for having a choice, for the experiences that you've had, for all the things that you have accomplished, for the fact that you could stand your ground, for that you've discovered who you are, and, you know, by the contrast, right? It's like, oh, I see how that is going. I don't want to do that anymore. So you step out of that, and now you're an example of an option. Just because people rejected the option doesn't mean that you can't be grateful for having had that option yourself and chosen that for yourself. And it also doesn't mean that they're wrong for not choosing it for themselves. Both things are true. Okay, so really just more neutralization, more love for any parts of you that have any lingering feelings about a situation where you grew apart from people that you love and care about, or people that you felt that there was potential for more with. Yeah, I got offended. I am inspired by you. I want to meet your family. I feel confused. How dare you? I love that. Yeah, there's a lot of mixed feelings throughout this situation, right? And not just by you, but other parties, right? You can imagine that these were the things that were being felt or thought within each person, or different people within the situation. And it's like, each of these things, can you find the love for yourself and the other in each of these things? First yourself, do yourself first. Like wherever you got offended, can you be present with the part of you that felt something about that, about felt like being offended? And where you were inspired, can you allow, and be present with inspired parts of you? Like let yourself take action on anything inspired in you through the situation, right? Like what are you inspired to now that this happened? And I want to meet your family. Interesting. So maybe this was more just about like where families were brought into it, where there was like more investments, right? Like maybe you did let some people meet your family, and maybe there's some feelings about that. Like, why did I allow this kind of two-faced, presence into my close space? Or why was my family, itself the two-faced presence? Whatever it is for you, apply this. But it's like there there's forgiveness for anything that was impure in your intentions, and there is love and for any part of you that was naive or open to anything that wasn't pure. You know what I mean? Full forgiveness all around on any of these topics. And I love that means no matter what it is, apply love. How dare you is a shaming tactic, which isn't really part of fair relating. But if somebody tried to shame you and say like, how dare you expect that, or how dare you act like that, or you're acting like you're superior, or or if you had said that to somebody else, like how dare you act so low, or how dare you talk behind their back, or how dare you not back me up, or how dare you not support me in this, like I can remember definitely as I started to expand my awareness and understand the freedom that I was gaining and wanted to share that with others. I definitely had some people that were a lot closer to me than they are now. And the reason that they're not closer to me now is because back then I left them behind because, when I say behind, I mean I left space between us because when I started my business along these lines, they did not support me. And I mean like support me like by like showing support. By like just actively showing support. And maybe they didn't do that because they just were confused, right? Like it's not wrong, and any judgment I have for them about that should be, allowed to be loved in myself and let go of. And so it's like now, it's like I don't have dislike, I don't have hate, I don't have ill feelings towards it. It's totally neutral. Like I get why they didn't support it because they didn't have the awareness that I had on that topic. But it also means it's like harder for me to relate to that person because I'm at a level where I could solve the issue that they want to complain about. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, that's hard for me because like there's only so many times I can listen to somebody complain about the same issue without solving it. Like I'm someone who wants to solve issues if there's an issue. It doesn't mean that I'm not available to listen to my friends when they need some support, but it also means like after like 5 times of listening to the same issue when I know the solution and they're not doing the solution, it's apparent that we've grown apart. Because I'm at a level where I will take responsibility for things and move past them, where they're in a space where they're still wanting to be in that problem and continue to complain about it, which means it will perpetuate and it'll take them on a different path from me. So I feel confused. This whole thing was probably very confusing, right? When you have people that you love and you feel connected to, and the soul plan is for you to kind of work together going forward or work it out, or there's all kinds of potentials for business or working together or raising standards, or like just kind of letting the ripples of the inspiration feed out, and then like that's not taken advantage of. That is confusing. It's confusing because It felt like such a good plan from a soul level, And it just wasn't the way that it was. And we've had that happen, right? In our process of spiritual awakening. If you look back, and if you've been on the journey for a while, I don't know, this is different for different people, but personally, there was a lot of times where we thought it was going to go a different way than it did. Because there was hidden enemies. We've got this. It's like, where did that card go? Yeah. There was hidden enemies along our path, right? Like, oh, we didn't know that they were going to do that. And this is the case too. So on a bigger level, this could just be your forgiveness for the whole big journey of awakening and ascending as a humanity, where we got set back. We got set back by years in some cases. And so for some people that, was very heartbreaking, disheartening, and confusing. And some people may have like gotten off track and really like had to put in a lot of effort to stand their ground. Yeah. So if you've done that, that's wonderful. Congratulations and thank you, and I honor you. And if you haven't done that, that's okay too, because you've learned something, and here you are now. And all of the things, all of it, is meant to be loved and forgiven by you. So it could have played out in your own personal life, or this could be referring to the larger scale of our whole ascension being kind of thwarted and thrown off at times by little, snafus that we didn't yet understand, but that we've come to understand, and that we have worked through each time at each level. There's never been a time where everyone gave up because we've continued on, like I know for me that there was never a time where I gave up and said, oh, this is crap. Because I just always knew, once I was onto it, once I realized what was happening in my life and how what I was doing was actually ascending, I stayed with it even when it was hard, even when I realized I was descending. I knew that it was part of my ascension, because that is what happened for me. I had to go into very dark places where I was the light and navigate from there. And it was difficult and challenging, and I found out who I am through that. I definitely had to walk amongst people who did not understand me and who were not interested in understanding me, because they were literally just trying to survive. And as far as, their view, I was maybe an example of something that was crazy or scary or not possible for them or just not interesting to them. When for me, it was like I would do nothing else. This is what I'm doing. There's nothing that will deter me from this path, because I know who I am and I know what I'm doing, and I love doing it, and there's nothing else that I would want to do. Like, I love living, and I love that I got to learn to enjoy the process, right? Because it wasn't always fun in the beginning. It was just like, oh, I got to get this done so that I can feel better. And now it's like, oh, I feel better, and now I can get things done while I feel better. And like, I worked for that. I did that for myself. And so I think you too have had to stand in your truth, stand in your own energy amongst people, places, things that did not support you, and as a result, you know who you are. And so anything from the process that we've kind of touched on in this reading that felt like a pokey place, like ooh, there's something there, you're probably very, very well aware of it by now, just through me talking about it. So you are able to kind of clean that up. And I saw for myself in this reading that there was one little spot where I was like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe this is something that I can clean up too. One aspect of this process for myself where there was like a little straggler that hadn't been loved by me yet. So I love that we got to do this reading and look at this topic of, just like the challenges that we faced along the way. And then some of those challenges were faced before a time when we knew that challenges were opportunities. So there was like an old part of me that was just like still stuck in like a victimized state because of what had happened, when really that part of me just needed to be welcomed and loved so that it would join the wholeness of who I am. Who knows that that challenge was an opportunity for me to see my strength and to know my resilience and to have that perspective, so that if I meet somebody along my journey who's stuck in that perspective, that I understand them and I can see them and I can hold space for them too. Wow, cool. So, pick 3, this is information for you to reflect on about any part of you that might need your love. I honor you and your process. It's meant to be helpful, so just take what is helpful to you. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in a future reading. Bye now.